So truth be told, nobody likes site protection. And I still don't love doing it, but it is an essential part of my business and I am getting paid for it. And I love that a lot more than years of my business where I didn't get paid for site protection. Hey, welcome to another episode of the Modern Craftsman podcast with just me. That's it. This is another supplemental recording with just me, and it is intended to mesh with a blog post that I wrote. I hope you guys enjoyed the last one. The next blog post that I wrote is with regard to site protection, and if you guys like this and you want to get into the specifics and kind of the details of my site protection, more so what products I use, stuff like that, we can obviously do that. This isn't necessarily that podcast. This is more so why, the value of that, how I'm charging for that, and why it should be one of, if not the most profitable part of your remodeling or even new construction business, because you should be making money doing it and you should also be saving yourself a ton of time and money and headache by kind of implementing these principles. So that's what this podcast is about. And if we get enough feedback that you guys want to kind of dig into how I'm approaching this from a remodel perspective, how I'm setting up site protection when I'm spraying on site, we can dig into all that too. You just got to reach out and let me know if that's what you want to do. And then I'll carve some time aside and get a blog post on that and dig into that for you guys so you can get the specifics as far as tape, plastics, paper, underlayments, negative air, all that really exciting stuff. Like when I met my wife, I dumped all this site protection stuff on her. And, I think at first she was like, I don't know. I kind of like him. He's got a decent personality, but there's a couple of red flags. And I kind of sensed that a little bit. So when I was like, we were on the fence and like, I felt like I needed to throw something out there that was going to be the hook. And that's when I was like, hey, have I ever talked to you about 6 mil poly site protection and delicate surface tape so I don't peel tape off of floors? And she was like, talk to me more. So that's how I kind of bagged her. Everyone loves site protection. You can't go wrong. All right. So truth be told, nobody likes site protection. I never actually, yeah, nobody really likes site protection. I didn't love site protection. I still don't love doing it, but it is an essential part of my business and I am getting paid for it. And I love that a lot more than years of my business where I didn't get paid for site protection. So I don't mind it as much anymore. It's kind of similar to the painting aspect of my business when for years I didn't I couldn't find an angle to bring value to paintwork, so I was charging next to nothing for it and I didn't enjoy it because I felt like I was doing a ton of work and I wasn't getting paid for it, and that's not fun. Not that making money should be the driver of what you're doing, but when you have a mundane task that doesn't really bring a lot of fulfillment and doesn't necessarily kind of build self-worth, um, it it's nice to get paid for those tasks, and it does sweeten the pot a little bit, at least for me. So what kind of led to this blog post and what was going through my head is I met with on one of my consulting calls, somebody booked a consulting call, and I saw their phone number and it was a local phone number, local to me. So I was like, hey, are you from this area? He was. So it wound up not being a phone call. I just wound up grabbing coffee with him. And he's a local remodeler, and he does middle of the road work. It's good work. He's providing a very valuable service to his customers, but he doesn't feel as though he's charging what he should be charging. So we got into the discussion of kind of what he's marketing, and that there's no issue with doing middle of the road work. That's probably most of the work that's here and within our country, in general, and kind of what makes our industry. But he's looking for ways to kind of be more profitable, and I think that a lot of that comes down to how you're differentiating, what you're marketing, and what you do, and what you can do differently. What you can bring to the table that's not necessarily going to add to the cost of your job, but it's a selling point for you. And it's, if you come to a customer, a potential client, and there's a handful of contractors on the table and you're a little bit more money, but you're doing more, it gives you an opportunity to be hired by them. Where if you didn't pitch this stuff and you didn't market yourself in a way that clearly advocated for what you're doing, they may go with that middle number or that lower number because they just assume that you're doing the same thing. So that's kind of where this conversation started. It was the impetus for me wanting to do a blog post on this. And one night I was laying in bed, and something that kind of caught me off guard was that this young man, he's actually my age, a little bit younger, but he said that they're pulling protection down every day because he just assumed it was a nuisance to his customers. And I kind of asked why, and his systems for site protection were kind of status quo. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. If this is what you're charging for, and that's what your customers have signed up for, there's nothing wrong with that. But my thought was, if I had to pull my protection down, that's a half a day of setup and a half a day of breakdown on a normal spray job. On a bigger job, it could be more. On a house, on a project that's on the second floor, it could go anywhere. It could be a half a day to a day and a half. So pulling that up and down would be very inefficient and cost prohibitive for me and my project. So I started thinking, with the setup that I have, it may encroach on customers' lifestyle and how they're living in their home, but that's for a temporary amount of time. And I think that the value that I provide with my setup and the how in depth our protection goes, that the value of that outweighs kind of the hindrance to their lifestyle or the loss of area within that home as we're working, right? So I want to put up site protection that my customers would be angry, frustrated if I took it down. So if you set up site protection and it looks like crap and plastic's flopping all over and there's dust everywhere else, I think they'd be indifferent to whether it stays up or not. They probably actually want it down because they have dust all over their house anyway. So why keep the site protection up? I might as well get all of my living space, if I'm dealing with dust and debris and unhealthy shit anyway. So that's kind of where my mind went with this. And I thought to myself, you should be aiming to protect a job site, a house, a customer's home in a way that they want it to stay up. They see how much time and care you took in doing that, and they would question you if you broke that down. You have to provide enough benefit and value to them, and it has to be very obvious, glaringly obvious as to what that setup is doing, that they understand in a very elementary, from a very elementary point of view, right? To dumb this down, if they look at that and it looks like shit, they're going to think it's not doing anything. If your plastic is tight and your poles are evenly spaced and you're taped where you can be taped, and you have a negative air machine and everything's nice and neat, even if they know nothing about site protection, they know nothing about construction, when they see that, it's going to do wonders for your business, for your image, and they're going to understand, hey, this guy takes a lot of pride in protecting my home, and that's going to really set the tone for your job, especially because the first day that you walk up to a job and you knock on the door. I know we had a podcast with Gary Katz, and he said, what's the first thing you come to the door with? And it's a towel or a drop cloth to wipe your feet when you walk in the door. So starting the job off this way is really critical to your success, and kind of creating what a customer sees, and what that initial experience is like for them. I think back to school, where they used to tell you, you have one chance to kind of express yourself the way that you want to, and show up and basically tell people who you are, and create that what's the word that I'm looking for? All right, it'll come back to me. But to introduce yourself and show who you are as a company and what you do and what you're about, right? And that initial engagement and interaction with this customer, you have one shot at that. And if you walk into their job and you set up a sloppy ass site protection and you create a mess in their house, it doesn't matter if you knock that job out of the park. Your reputation and what you're doing is somewhat tarnished and blemished, because you didn't take the time to protect their house. So let's see. Let's dig into this a little bit more. What did site protection look like for me at the beginning of my career? So I wasn't doing the type of work that I'm doing now. I wasn't working for the type of customers that I'm working for now. Okay. First impression. I'm sorry. I don't know why I could not think of that, but you only have one chance to make a first impression, right? And that's what your teachers would tell you in school. My parents would tell me when I'm going to school, when you're in college and you're doing the interviewing process, right? You have one shot to make a first impression. You can't make a first impression twice. So step up and make a good first impression. All right. Now that I got that out of the way and my brain can operate correctly again, my site protection when I first started, and again, this is knowing nothing. So you only know what you know. I was not exposed to a high level of site protection growing up for anyone that I worked for my father's company, anything like that. So I knew what I knew. Site protection wasn't a priority. Working for a different customer base. So these people weren't paying for this. It also wasn't really being given to them as an option. So for me, it was drop cloths. It was a towel at the front door, maybe putting a drop cloth or a moving quilt over a door. And then I was big on like the box fan in the window and taking a roofing cushion, a foam pad, and basically creating my version of a negative airspace in that room. So if I was doing a bathroom, I'd pull the door and I'd throw a drop cloth over it so we could get in and out. And then I'd put a fan in the window, and I'd get as much dust out of that space as possible and into the yard for the kids to play in, and for the squirrels to run around in, and for all the bugs and the bees to be exposed to lead and everything else. Excuse me. All right. So I'm saying this and bringing a bit of levity to it. It's actually relatively serious. But I work in a lot of older homes, and there's a lot of dangerous substances in those homes, and the way that we built in the past wasn't the safest way possible. And I'm sure that things that we're doing now, products that we're using now, it'll be the same thing moving forward. So I think that, although a lot of things have changed, nothing really has changed. And I think that we're going to constantly have to be implementing protection based on our discoveries of kind of what's in the systems that we're using. So 30 years from now, I'm sure that site protection is going to be just as critical, due to different things. We're not going to be as much lead and asbestos, but there'll be other things that are within the systems and components of what we're building that will be dangerous and we will find out about. So I don't think this is going anywhere. It's not like we're going to get done renovating all the old homes and it's like, oh, we have nothing to worry about. So that was the extent of my site protection. If it was on a second floor and I knew it was going to be a very dirty job, maybe we'd bag the trash and then walk it out, so that it wasn't in like a can, or we'd find a way to go out the window with it. But it wasn't to the level that I kind of do now. I wasn't as obsessive about it. And, now I'm 37. I have a couple of kids. I live in older homes and I understand how important this stuff is. I understand, if you don't get these potentially dangerous materials out of a home safely, that they wind up in the walls, in the floor, in the HVAC ducts. So you really want to take care when you're doing that. But that was about the extent of it for me. It was try and minimize the dust, and keep the customer's home clean. A lot of times, more so than even safe. If it appears clean, it's probably clean enough. And vacuuming our way out at the end of the day. If it was hardwood floors, kind of wiping things down, making sure that it didn't appear as if we left a mess in there. But that was it. I was reusing a lot of the same drop cloths. I didn't invest in zip walls and zip doors, and I was reusing stuff. I didn't have negative air machines, multiple types of air scrubbers. So it's been a journey and a learning experience for sure. But I also, even when I started implementing a higher level of care, was having to foot the bill for that because I didn't how I marketed that. I was either paying for kind of the sweat equity to set this stuff up and break it down, because at the end of the day, it made my life easier. If my mess was isolated to a specific place within that home, I didn't have as much cleanup to do. It saved me hours, at the end of every week, or a few minutes at the end of every day that I didn't have to clean stuff up. So it was worth it to me. If I could charge for the materials, great, that would be wonderful for me. But a lot of times I wasn't even able to get that paid for. But again, in my mind, and I still stick to this, right? If you don't have the customer base that's willing to pay you a line item in your budget to set up and break down proper, adequate, high level site protection, I don't know if I'd walk away from that job. If you need the work, if that's what your market is, it's not, hey, this is at this point in my career now, it's, if you don't want that, no. But even this guy that I met with said, what if they're not willing to pay that? And it's like, we'll see what they are willing to pay, because at the end of the day, it's going to save you a ton of time. It's going to cover your ass, and it's going to keep your customers safe. So that should ease a lot of the anxiety and the fear of potentially harming somebody's home or their health. So I think that it's still worth it to do, even if somebody's not willing to pay you. Ideally, you're breaking into a market where people are willing to pay you. It's a line item in your budget and you're getting paid for everything. But worst case, do it anyway. At least I did. And I think that slowly you can build up to getting paid for that. When I realized, I guess the more that I did and the more comprehensive our site protection came, the longer it took and the more it cost me. And I realized I wasn't getting paid for this, right? So my customers are benefiting from this. Any employee that I have doing this is on the clock. They're getting paid for this. I'm paying out of pocket for the materials, but I'm not getting paid for any of my time. So I'm essentially funding this aspect of my customer's renovation. And to kind of equate that to something that would make a lot more sense to the average person is when you go out to eat, the cost of that meal, if you get a cheeseburger, the cost of that cheeseburger isn't just the meat, the bun, the cheese, the lettuce, and the french fries. It's the cost of washing the dishes. It's the cost of somebody prepping the onions and the lettuce. It's the cost of the rent. It's the cost of the gas to cook that. And it's the cost of somebody setting that table and clearing that table. So if I'm doing a project, all of that needs to be accounted for. Even I think of washing paintbrushes, right? If I take my paintbrushes home after hours and wash them, my customer's not paying for that when they should be, right? The paintbrushes were required on the job. If it takes me 20 minutes to clean them at the end of the day, that should be on the clock. That's just part of the paint work. And that's arguable. I don't do it all the time. A lot of times I'm wrapping up a job and I have 8 paintbrushes from different colors of touch up and I want to get going, and I'm not charging the customer for that. But just if you approach things in that manner, at least you'll be heading in the right direction. Um, so what I really love about site protection, because there's not that much to love about it, but is when you're getting paid for it, that's amazing. But on a couple of benefits to that are I create a space, right? I'm installing cabinets thing at a spray in place, and I isolate this work zone for myself. A lot of times I have to be careful because I say this to customers, and some of the customers who aren't quite aware of my sense of humor at this point look at me very, very kind of off kilter. But I essentially tell them I'm creating a kill room, right? Where all of my dirt, debris, dust, paint, blood, sweat, tears are all going to be in this room. And then I'm going to wrap it up and, dispose of it. And nobody's going to know that I was ever there. So essentially, I look at it, if you've ever seen the show Dexter, where I'm setting up a kill room. I want everything in that room. I want to be able to stage my tools in that room. I want my supplies in that room, and I want space to work in there, right? If I'm building, say I'm putting in a wall to divide a room, and I just make enough room in that workspace to kind of limit the exposure and the impact that I'm having on the rest of the home, and it's only enough room for me to work, where am I going to put my lumber? Where am I going to put my compressor? Where am I going to put my nails, my saws, all of that stuff? So I either have to do that outside, or I need to put it in a space that's not in the protected area. So now at the end of the day, I have my workspace to clean, but now I also have to clean every other room. I have to clean the hallway, the stairs that walk to outside. I have to clean up the driveway with the sawdust. I have to clean up the neighbor's driveway that the sawdust blew into. So I would rather explain to the customers, hey, this is going to be a larger work area than we need. It's going to impact your living environment for a couple of days, but you're not going to have any dirt. I'm not going to have to stage materials in your spare bedroom or your daughter's bedroom who's away at college. All of this is going to be localized in one spot, and that's where I'm going to live for however long it takes to finish this job. I'm not going to be in any of your other spaces. So I borrow this space. I'm not going to need any of your other space. So I live in that space, right? I wear noise canceling headphones. I walk in to the job. I bring all of my stuff. I bring it in that workspace. I zip the wall. I put on my headphones, and I'm left to my own devices for the rest of the day. And typically those devices are work. So it, oddly enough, it creates enough of a barrier that customers aren't coming in every time a question comes up to their head. And this is just a side benefit of this, that they want to ask me a question, or they want to interact with me, or they want to see what I'm doing, right? I clean up enough at the end of the day that they can go in there and they could look at whatever they want. They could sleep in there if they want. They can eat dinner in there. It's going to be clean. But during the day, that's my workspace. And it streamlines the process. It creates efficiencies. I don't have to clean the rest of their house. And that's where I live. So I get peace of mind from that, right? I'm not affecting the rest of their house. As long as I'm clear and deliberate and upfront with them and honest with them as to how much space I'm going to take, kind of what my idea is for creating this entire bubble, and every space is unique, right? Because sometimes you have to get them to a bathroom that's in their master. So you have to figure a way to get them in and out that's safe and out of the way, but you also need that space to work. So it's not just putting up plastic walls or taking over an entire room. You have to kind of be a little bit, have a little bit of ingenuity. In creating this setup so that, again, you can do the work, you can install the work, you're not pulling, moving, retaping, you're doing this once, setting it up once, and then you're breaking it down once, because you can't have the customer pay for this multiple times. It's hard enough to sell as is, so do it once, do it right. um, so again, back to meeting with this guy and his business, and he mentioned breaking down his site protection every day, and that struck a chord with me and raised a ton of questions. And I asked him what he was doing, and he said, a lot of drop cloths in and up and down the stairs into the space, some ram board, vacuuming their way out, and this this really kind of was the catalyst for this blog post, and what got me thinking about how we should be selling, how we should be creating a profitable aspect of our business with site protection. And there's a few key points that really came to mind that I want to elaborate on here. And one is that setting up and breaking down your site protection on a daily basis, it's costly, and that's typically not to the customer, because if you're doing it this way, you're probably not charging for it. So you're paying for that. Your employees are getting paid, so it's costly to us. Um, it's a pain in the ass. Nobody likes doing it once. If you're there for 2 weeks, that's 10 times that you're setting up and 10 times that you're breaking down. It's just inefficient. I feel like it's not good for morale. You're annoyed doing it. You're not doing a good job because you're just trying to make it faster and faster. So you're funding all of this and you're not doing it right. And it's creating a mess within the home. So something there needs to change. Another thing that came to mind with this, and that this is not a stab at this guy, this is something that I did for years, but you think that I'm going to invest in some drop cloths, right? It's a kind of a one-time hit. They'll last for 10 years, and buy once, cry once. I don't feel that drop cloths do an amazing job of protecting. I think that they're for painting, and painting kind of at best. Still, a lot of times for painting, I'm using different site protection around the perimeter, because you walk on them, they move, you trip over them, you spill paint. They suck to shake out and fold. Like, I would have to keep somebody else on full time just to help me fold drop cloths. It's frustrating, to say the least. But I don't think that they're the cleanest and healthiest site protection option out there, right? If I'm demoing a bathroom on a second floor and I'm pulling all this stuff out and I'm using drop cloths, one, on a staircase, they're dangerous. You could be tripping with heavy stuff in your hands. You're all of this dust and debris is on them, and then you're shaking them out and breathing that, and then throwing them back down on the floor the next day. So I just think that there's better options out there, and that you don't have to pull up and remove every day also. So you can make money that way. If you were to set up your site protection for that to stay up for the duration of the job, how much time would you be saving yourself and your employees on a daily basis of breaking down from that bathroom renovation, where you're pulling all the drop cloths, you're shaking them out, and then you're cleaning, whether it's with a Swiffer on the hardwoods, a vacuum, a mop, a rag, whatever it may be, you're cleaning, and probably not even that great. You have potential for dirt and debris to get under the drop cloth and then scratch whatever you're trying to protect in the first place. So it doesn't really make that much sense to me. I think that when you're setting up all of this site protection, you should really, this shouldn't be left to your lowest level employee or the new guy, right? Because they're going to set this up and they haven't done this. They don't know where this job's going. So you have somebody put down floor protection in a kitchen, um, and maybe you're doing it right, right? You're putting down like an Econo runner and then a masonite on top of that, and they just installed it underneath all the cabinets and they taped all of the masonite. So now when it's time to install the cabinets, you have all of them loaded in the room, and now you have to move all the cabinets to pull the masonite to get it out from where the cabinets are going to go, and you just wasted all of this time, right? So when I'm setting up my site protection, I know where the critical areas are. I know what I really want to protect, what could get damaged, and I don't want to be moving it 2 and 3 times. I don't want to have to bump the wall over 6 inches because I didn't account for this massive cabinet. I need space to rotate it to be able to scribe the end panel off of it. So all of that, should be compensated for, so that when you're setting this stuff up, it's once and it's done, and you're getting paid for it once and done, and you're not moving it a million times. Every time you pull paint off of a wall, you are liable for that paint peeling. Even if you're getting paid for it, it's just a pain in the butt. I'd rather put tape on the wall once, one strip of tape, and not have to worry about potentially peeling paint 6, 7 other times because you keep moving stuff. When you set up site protection, like a comprehensive site protection in this way, it looks very professional. There's a system to it. You're using new materials. It looks clean. It looks neat. You do it all at once. So this customer sees you show up. They see you load in a Econo runner or an underlayment. They see you bring in masonite, which can be reused. They see you bringing in new cardboard. They see you bringing in new plastic. All of this gets piled in like a staging area, and they see all of this. They understand the cost. They understand what they're paying. It's not bringing in a handful of drop cloths, dumping them on the floor where they're like, we just pay this guy $500 for this, and all he does is set up old drop cloths that have paint and garbage all over them, right? So they immediately understand the value of what they're paying for with your site protection. You set it up, everything's nice, it's neat, it's tight, it looks orderly. Again, this is that first impression. It's providing the value to them. They're willing to pay this fee when they see this. And if they had a hard time about it and they had trouble kind of digesting that cost, they now understand it. And do you know when they're going to understand it more? For the 2, 3 weeks, whatever, 2, 3 months that you're working there, and they don't have dirt and debris throughout their house, right? All of that mess is contained. You're not damaging floors elsewhere. You're not getting dust into their returns. It's not going into their HVAC system, into their kids' bedroom. So the value of that initial investment of their money lives much longer than demolition stage. It lives throughout the end of the project. And then when you're wrapping up and you're breaking all of that down and you're cleaning as you go, it continues to pay dividends to you, because now you're not cleaning the rest of the house. You don't have to extend your cleaning into the other bedroom, into the bathroom, into the floor that you damaged in the hallway. So it continues to kind of pay for itself. Again, the purpose of this article here is to kind of get you thinking about how to be able to implement site protection in a way that your customers are willing to foot the bill for that. For years, I paid for it. And it was paying for the materials, and it was also paying for the labor to install all of this. And it wasn't something that I enjoyed doing. Over investing in a project where you're kind of elevating your craft, or you're overbuilding a built-in or a finish, and it's something that's very gratifying for you. That's one thing. Over investing in site protection, it doesn't create that self-worth. There's not as much fulfillment in that, and it's a very mundane task. And I think that it doesn't do the same. It doesn't kind of make me tick as overbuilding something else that I really enjoy doing, where somebody walks in and they're like, "Oh my God, this is amazing." So The goal is to be able to have your customers foot that bill. And again, it's pay for something. But if you create this system and you create these efficiencies and you're able to clearly communicate to your customers what your site protection looks like, and that it's not just drop cloths, and that it's not something that needs to be broken down, and that it's basically you're creating a room within their room to keep them safe, to protect them, to protect their home, to protect their family, and you create an itemized list of what's going to be included in that, they'll understand the cost associated with that. And if they don't, then you did something wrong. Your system wasn't good enough. You didn't protect their home well enough, and they're upset about it. If you charge somebody $1,000 for site setup, $1,500 for site setup to cover the cost, or for protection, the cost of setup, breakdown, and the materials that you need, and it's a $60,000 kitchen, they should be more than willing to foot that bill. You shouldn't be paying for that. And I think that if you're not creating the value there, and at the end of the job, that's a expense that they paid that they would consider doing without the next time, then you're not doing your job and your system isn't as dialed as it should be. And a lot of times you're going to have to invest in this on your own and foot this bill initially. And that's where I was kind of saying before that you can't do it anyway, because it's going to create the customer base. It's going to really define who you are as a contractor and strengthen your reputation. If you look up Google reviews of my company, I don't even know if they talk about my work, but a lot of it is how immaculate we left the house, what it looked like before and after, and the care that we took in their home. And when you're working in older homes and you have a specific customer base, that's very important to them. So the profitability is there, right? Days that I set up site protection where I have a system and I know what I'm going to need, and I keep all of that stuff stocked and it's in my shop, and I can set up a full spray booth in a half a day and charge them. It's some of the most profitable work in, all of the tasks that I do, all of the trades that I perform. Site protection is some of the most profitable work. And customers appreciate it the most. And if you can create these systems to protect these people's homes, I think that can be very profitable for you too. And it's going to take some time to get there and develop these systems and have the confidence to sell this. The value's there regardless, even if you're not getting paid for it, because there's value to yourself, because you're not potentially damaging a customer's home. You don't have to clean the whole house at the end of the job. You don't have to clean the whole house during the job. You get to work in your space. You're not running back and forth to the truck. Your tools aren't in another room. So there's value there for you, even if there's not initial value for the customer. But I think that there's a ton of value there for the customer if you hold yourself accountable, you protect their home, you look after that protection. If it gets damaged, you fix it, you repair it, and you keep their house not only safe and healthy, but undamaged. There's a ton of value there, and customers will be absolutely willing to pay you for that. It's just, again, creating that confidence in the sale, and understanding that you can do that and that there's a market for that. So that's kind of where I wanted to take this podcast and this blog post. Again, this is going to end up living on our website once we get that up and running. And if you guys want to dig into more so the nitty gritty of what I use, filters, underlayments, tapes. I work in a lot of older homes, where we have potential finishes to be failing due to lack of primer or adhesion. And there's just a million things going on where I have a bunch of different systems to ensure that what we're putting up isn't going to damage the home. And I'm more than willing to dig into that. That's just a different direction that I wanted to take here. This was more so about, creating that value and that profitability, not just for yourselves, but for your customers, and being aware of that. Obviously not as philosophical as last week's, but hopefully this all made sense to you and you found some there's some takeaways in this for you, and there's always room for improvement. There's always new products that are coming out there. Don't be afraid to try new products, in a small area before you do the entire space. I would recommend that. I've had issues with products that have damaged or not done what they were supposed to. Luckily, a couple of them were on my own house, so I only had to hear from a few choice people in my life about that. But you live and you learn. I appreciate all the time that you guys are spending with me. Hopefully, this is insightful for you. And we're going to keep getting in once a week and get these recorded. If there's anything that you specifically want to dig into, reach out to me. You can reach out to me on Instagram. Email a lot of times works best. It's tyler@trghomeconcepts.com. As always, if you have the time, hop online, give us a review. That helps us grow and be able to set time aside for this. As you can tell, it's not it. I'm sitting here for 45 minutes talking to you. It takes me an hour to get showered, 45 minutes to do my hair. The bronzer is not fast at all. I have to get shaved and cleaned, all that stuff. So it's a huge time suck for me to sit here. No, all kidding aside, it's something that I enjoy, but it does take a lot of time. The podcast, at this point, it's taking almost an entire Tuesday between prep work for it, blog posts, and I'd like to continue to do that because for me, it makes me feel good. I'm able to help. I'm able to give back. I'm able to respond to people's questions in a more in-depth manner. So I'd like to continue down this road, and it's not just about this part of the podcast. It's the podcast as a whole. It's everyone involved. It's Doug, it's Catherine, Nick, Anna, everyone. We could use your help. So if you have a neighbor, if you have a friend, if you have a brother, a cousin, a dog, a pet gerbil, tell them about the Modern Craftsman podcast. Check it out. Give it a listen. Reviews are amazing. We appreciate them. Even if it's a quick one-word review, it helps us so much. I can't tell you. But I appreciate that. Spread the word. I'll catch you guys here next week. Thank you again.